Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Like I said, we're coming to you from Waterloo, Ontario. We're about 1 hour east of Toronto, the largest metropolitan area in Canada. And for all you tuning in, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Please note this webinar and all 12 of the webinars will be recorded for posterity. They'll be posted online. You can access them through the preventingcrime.ca website. I think you're all on mute right now, but I'll take questions following the presentation, and I'll try to keep up if there's a plethora. I don't pretend to have all the answers, and I'm not afraid to say I don't know. If you're following on Twitter, there's my Twitter feed right there at WR Drug Strategy, and I encourage you to post a discussion using the hashtag RXOD. And let's get going here. It's an exciting lineup, very much, this whole series, and it's come together rather quickly from our end. We were able to access some funding, and so what we've done is put together a series of 12 webinars to sort of kickstart the discussion in Canada, because it strikes many of us in the field that there isn't much discussion going on. And what I will do today is take you a very brief overview. I'll focus mostly on prescription opioids. Heroin is around these parts, but it's not huge like it is in other parts of Canada, other parts of the U.S., and other parts of the world. It's really prescription opioids that are the substance of interest. And whether you know it or not, I count you among my friends of crime prevention. And like I said, we're a lot less about the nail them and jail them approach. We're a lot less about locking your doors, good lighting and all that kind of stuff. It's important. But what we are about is swimming upstream to reduce the risk factors that we know will lead to crime, fear of crime, victimization. So that's what we're about, and we've been doing that since 1995. I encourage you to sign up and be a friend of crime prevention. It takes a couple of minutes, and it makes my coworker extremely happy. We're also on Twitter. Preventing Crime is our Twitter feed there. So our mission and vision out of the Crime Prevention Council is really to mobilize the efforts of our community in preventing and reducing crime, victimization, and fear of crime, and fostering the well-being of everyone. So we really do aim to be inclusive. We believe that if it takes a community to raise a child, and it most certainly does, then everybody needs to be at that table. And in the issues of opioids, we would hope, and so far so good, to draw a wide diversity of people, including those with lived experience, which too often are not included in decisions of program design and development. And by people with lived experience, I mean people who have experienced an opioid addiction, or perhaps are a bereaved child or a bereaved parent. All perspectives are important at that table and valued, and should be acknowledged as such. So that's sort of our modus operandi. And in terms of the link between drug-related issues and in particular opioids and crime, there is a link there. And what we do know is that if you walk through Canada's jails, and I suspect the similar kind of thing is going on in the U.S., we know that those places are filled with people who have cycled through foster homes, who are very often victims of childhood abuse, trauma, and neglect. And the really great thing about opioids is they're responsible for not just mitigating physical pain, but also emotional pain. And opioids work really well for sort of mitigating trauma victims. So there is a link there, and in really broadly speaking, it's been just over 100 years since Canada's first Narcotic Control Act was passed, and opioids were the substance of concern then. It was largely based, the law was largely based on some moral crusading that was going on at the time, and really squarely aimed at the Chinese immigrant population in British Columbia in particular. Sounds radical to say, and not a whole lot has been written about it, but there's a fantastic book called Panic and Indifference, and it's sort of the story of Canada's narcotic history. And it's a seminal moment because At that point, we saw the disappearance of health interventions and the rise of approaches to deal with addiction and drug-related issues land squarely in the realm of justice and enforcement. And it's been that way largely ever since. Even if on paper it says something else, we know the vast majority of funds go towards supply interdiction and other enforcement and justice initiatives. We know that in Canada, 1 in 2 jobs, this is 10 years ago, 1 in 2 jobs in the Canadian criminal justice system, that's cops, courts, and corrections, are squarely related to issues of substance use. We know our prisons are filled with people who have an addiction, and if you don't walk into a Canadian prison with an addiction, you're more likely to walk out. And they are identified high risk factors for chronic disease like HIV and hepatitis C. So there is a link there, and in my part of the world here, not too far away, a local police force surveyed people who were picked up for serial property crimes and determined that a full 90% of those people traced their crimes to an opioid addiction, and in particular prescription medications. So, you know, just because you do drugs, other than the fact that it may be illicit, doesn't make you a criminal, but there is a link there, and that's sort of our reason for getting involved in drug-related issues. Sometimes our work looks very much like a health sector, like this report that we did back in 2008, really a first portrait of, first look at drug-related overdoses in Waterloo Region. Sometimes it looks more of an integrated effort. This is our drug strategy. It's a guiding document for Waterloo Region, and it was concocted by a 26-member task force, very diverse and informed by more than 400 people who came out. And sometimes it looks like a film, and on Wednesday, it's about 48 hours from now, we're going to release a film called Eyes Wide Open. It features 2 Canadians who were affected by an accidental overdose, and they'll share their experiences. It's about 7 minutes long. I'm quite proud of it, and we'll post it on YouTube for your viewing pleasure.